You've watched them dominate marathons. You've seen them break world records. You've wondered how Kenyan runners seem almost superhuman on the track. But here's the question that changes everything. Is there actually a secret technique behind their success? Or is that just another running myth we've all been sold? What if I told you the answer isn't what you think? What if the real story is far more fascinating than any single technique could ever be? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you think about running, and the last revelation might just shock you. Welcome to a journey into the heart of Kenyan running excellence. Today we're going deep, beyond the surface-level explanations you've heard 1,000 times. We're not just talking about genetics or altitude or diet. We're diving into something far more nuanced, far more interesting, and frankly, far more useful for you as a runner. Prepare to discover why the question itself, whether Kenyans practice the technique, reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how elite performance actually works. Before we begin this exploration, I want to know something. Comment below right now and tell me what city or country you're watching from. Are you in Brazil, the United States, Kenya itself? I love seeing where our running community spans across the globe, so drop that comment and let's build this connection. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. When people ask if Kenyans practice the technique, they're usually referring to something specific they've heard about. Perhaps a particular running form, a special training method, or some biomechanical secret passed down through generations. But here's where it gets interesting. The notion of a single unified technique is actually a Western construct, a way of trying to package and systematize something that's far more organic and complex. When you travel to the Rift Valley, when you spend time in places like Iten or Eldoret, what you discover isn't a rigid technical system being drilled into young runners. Instead, you find something far more profound. You find a culture where running isn't just a sport, it's woven into the fabric of daily life from childhood. Children in rural Kenya often run several kilometers to school every single day, not as training, but as transportation. They're not thinking about technique. They're not analyzing their foot strike or their cadence. They're simply moving, efficiently because inefficient movement would exhaust them before they reach their destination. This creates something remarkable, a completely natural running form developed through necessity rather than instruction. Now, does this mean Kenyan runners don't work on technique at all? Absolutely not. And this is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Elite Kenyan runners and their coaches are incredibly sophisticated in their approach to biomechanics and form. But here's the critical difference. They're not starting from scratch, teaching someone how to run from a textbook. They're refining something that's already deeply ingrained, making subtle adjustments to something fundamentally sound. Think of it like this. If you tried to teach a fish to swim using a manual, breaking down every movement into technical components, you'd probably make that fish worse at swimming. But if you took a fish that already swims naturally and helped it optimize its movement for racing, you'd see remarkable improvements. That's closer to what happens with Kenyan runners. The foundation is already there, built through years of natural movement. The technical work comes later, as refinement rather than construction. Let me share something specific that might surprise you. When researchers have studied elite Kenyan runners, they've found considerable variation in running form among them. Some have a more pronounced forefoot strike, others land closer to midfoot. Some have higher cadence, others take longer strides. Some hold their arms higher, others lower. What they share isn't a single technique, but rather certain underlying principles. They tend to run with high efficiency, minimal braking forces, excellent elastic energy return, and remarkable consistency in their form, even when fatigued. But the expression of these principles varies from runner to runner. This tells us something profound. Elite running isn't about copying a specific technique. It's about understanding and applying fundamental principles in a way that works for your individual biomechanics and strengths. Agora pensi comigo. Think about this for a moment. We often look for shortcuts, for that one secret trick that will transform our running overnight. But what if the real secret isn't a technique at all? What if it's about building a foundation over years, about consistency, about developing efficiency through volume, rather than trying to force a particular form? The Kenyan approach challenges our quick-fix mentality. It suggests that excellence comes from patient, long-term development rather than technical hacks. Comment below right now and tell me, do you focus more on technique or on simply running more consistently? I'm genuinely curious about your approach because there's no single right answer here. Let's move to our second major insight, and this one relates directly to training philosophy. When Kenyan runners train, they do incorporate technical drills and form work, but it's integrated into their training in a very specific way. They don't separate technique from running the way many Western programs do. You won't find Kenyan training camps where runners spend an hour doing isolated drills before their actual run. Instead, technical elements are woven throughout the training itself. During easy runs, there's an emphasis on relaxation and natural rhythm. During faster work, the focus shifts to maintaining form under stress. After hard efforts, there's often a period of technique-focused strides or drills, but it's brief and purposeful. The philosophy is that technique should serve running, not exist separately from it. This integration means that technical improvements happen in context, which makes them far more likely to stick when it matters, during actual races. There's also something crucial about the role of observation and modeling in Kenyan running culture. Young runners grow up watching and training alongside elite athletes. They absorb patterns of movement through observation rather than explicit instruction. In Iten, it's not uncommon to see world-class marathoners training on the same roads as aspiring juniors. This proximity creates a form of social learning that's incredibly powerful. When you run behind someone with excellent form day after day, your body naturally begins to adopt similar patterns. You pick up on rhythms, on how they handle hills, on how they maintain composure when tired. This kind of learning bypasses the conscious mind and works directly with the motor system. It's one reason why training environment matters so much, not just for motivation, but for technical development. Here's where we need to bust another myth. Many people assume that because Kenyan runners are so dominant, they must train harder than everyone else. But research shows that elite Kenyan runners actually train at similar volumes and intensities to elite runners from other countries. The difference isn't primarily in the quantity or even the quality of training. The difference lies in the foundation, those years of natural running development, the consistency over decades, the lifestyle factors that support recovery, and yes, the efficiency of movement that develops when running is part of your daily life from early childhood. When we talk about whether Kenyans practice technique, we need to understand that their technical work is built on a completely different foundation than what most recreational runners have. They're not learning to run efficiently, they're optimizing efficiency that already exists. Let me give you a practical example that brings this home. Imagine two runners, both talented, both committed. Runner A grows up driving to school, sitting in classrooms, then driving home. They take up running at age 20 after years of minimal movement. Runner B grows up running to school, playing active games all afternoon, walking or running everywhere out of necessity. They also become serious about running at age 20. Both now train the same program with the same coach. Who do you think will respond better? Who has the better movement foundation? The answer is obvious, and it has nothing to do with genetics or altitude. It's about movement history, about how many millions of steps each person has taken and under what conditions. This is the hidden advantage that many Kenyan runners have. Not a secret technique, but a movement-rich childhood that creates an ideal foundation for later athletic development. You're probably wondering, so what does this mean for me? Can I apply any of this to my own running? This is where things get really practical and exciting. While you can't recreate a Kenyan childhood, you can absolutely apply the principles that make Kenyan training so effective. First principle: prioritize consistency over intensity. Kenyan runners are famous for their easy days being genuinely easy. They understand that improvement comes from sustained effort over time, not from crushing yourself every workout. Second principle: integrate technique work into your running rather than treating it as separate. Do your form drills after you're warmed up when your body is ready to learn. Third principle: focus on relaxation and efficiency rather than forcing a particular form. The best technique for you is the one that allows you to run fastest with least effort, and that might look different from anyone else's form. Fourth principle: be patient with development. Elite Kenyan runners typically train for 10 to 15 years before reaching their peak. Quick fixes don't create lasting excellence. Now let me address something controversial. There's a tendency to attribute Kenyan success to genetics, to suggest that they have some inherent physical advantage that makes them better runners. But here's what the research actually shows. Within Kenya, running success is heavily concentrated in specific regions, particularly the Rift Valley, and even more specifically among certain ethnic groups like the Kalenjin. But here's the key. These same genetic populations exist outside these regions, and they don't show the same running dominance. What differs isn't the genes but the culture, the environment, the lifestyle, the training traditions. This tells us that while genetics certainly matter at the highest levels of any sport, they're not the primary explanation for Kenyan dominance. The real story is about culture, opportunity, lifestyle, and training wisdom passed down through generations. It's about a system that identifies talent early, develops it patiently, and creates pathways to success. There's one more element we need to discuss, something that often gets overlooked in conversations about Kenyan running. It's the mental approach, the psychological framework that Kenyan runners bring to their training and racing. When you talk to elite Kenyan runners, you notice a particular mindset. They have tremendous respect for the training process. They're patient with development. They maintain perspective about setbacks. They run with confidence but without arrogance. This mental approach isn't a technique you can practice in the traditional sense, but it's absolutely learnable. It comes from being part of a culture where running is valued, where athletic success is seen as achievable through dedication, where there are countless examples of people who came from humble beginnings and achieved greatness through running. This creates a powerful belief system that supports consistent effort over many years. Comment right now and tell me, what aspect of Kenyan running culture do you find most inspiring? Is it their training consistency? Their patient approach to development? Their running community? Write it in the comments because I want to understand what resonates most with runners around the world. Your perspective matters, and these comments help shape future content. So here's what we've discovered today. The question of whether Kenyans practice the technique is actually the wrong question. There isn't a single secret technique that explains their dominance. Instead, there's a complex interplay of factors. Natural running development through an active childhood, cultural traditions that value and support running, training approaches that integrate technique with actual running, patient, long-term development rather than quick fixes, a mental framework that supports consistency and confidence. When all these elements come together, you get the remarkable success we see in Kenyan distance running. The lesson for the rest of us isn't to try to copy a specific technique, but to understand and apply the underlying principles. Here's the beautiful truth that emerges from all of this. You don't need to be Kenyan to become a better runner. You don't need access to high altitude or special genetic gifts. What you need is patience, consistency, smart training that respects your body's natural movement patterns and a long-term perspective on development. You need to stop chasing technique fixes and start building a foundation. You need to run more easy miles, to let your body find its natural efficient form, to trust the process over months and years rather than weeks. This brings us to your journey moving forward. Everything we've discussed today should change how you approach your training. Stop obsessing over whether your foot strike matches some ideal. Stop trying to force your form to look like someone else's. Instead, focus on consistency, on running relaxed, on gradually building volume, on integrating technique work naturally into your training. Run easy when you should run easy. Train with others when possible. Be patient with your development. These are the real secrets, not sexy or complicated, but profoundly effective. I want you to do something right now. In the comments, write down one specific change you'll make to your training based on what you learned today. Will you commit to more consistent, easy running? Will you stop forcing a particular technique and let your natural form emerge? Will you adopt a longer-term perspective on your development? Write it down, make that commitment public. There's power in declaring your intentions. If you found this valuable, if this changed how you think about running and technique, then you need to watch the next video in this series, where we dive deep into exactly how elite runners structure their training weeks. We break down the actual workouts, the recovery strategies, the progression patterns that create long-term improvement. Click the video on your screen right now and continue this journey with me. And before you go, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you never miss insights that can transform your running. Drop your comment below, share this with a running friend who needs to hear this message. Your engagement helps this community grow and helps me create more content that serves you. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video where we go even deeper into the science and art of elite running performance.